Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome back, it's Jordan here. Just the other day, I decided to take on my first ever light kit. And it was sent to me by lightmybricks.com. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this. This is gonna be easy. And then it was like, pow, 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 and it beat me up. It defeated me. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so difficult. I can't install this. This takes so much patience. I have no idea what I'm doing. And like by the end of the day, I was like sort of frustrated with the whole experience. And then today was a new day. I came in with a fresh mind. I sat down and I was like, okay, I gotta get this light kit installed. And that's what I did. And it's funny, I didn't really follow the instructions like step by step. I came up with like my own system and that sort of worked. It really like helped me get through the process, and I think the more experience that I get with light kits, like today is only day number 2 of working with light kits, and I feel like a lot more confident than I did when I originally started this process. It's just like anything in life. The more you do it, the better you're going to become at it. So today I want to feature the Natural History Museum because I have it fully lit up. There are some modifications that I made to the instructions, like to the process, and there was just a way that I did it that just sort of made more sense to my mind, and I'm going to share that with you. I think it makes sense to turn my lights off for this clip. In fact, I haven't even had a look at this modular building lit up with the lights off. This is the first time right now. Of course, I tested it pre this video clip, like when I was originally installing it, but here we go. I hope it works. Look at that. Isn't that cool? This is my first ever light kit. Oh, the excitement is real. It was a journey getting here, but boy, oh boy, that looks pretty cool. There's 2 yellow lights right outside the front door there, and then 2 cool white lights lighting up the statue, 2 lighting up the banners, so 1 on either side, and then the street lights. So there's like 7 lights on the front of this thing. 7 different wires. Ah! And then when you flip it around back here, this office has a light as well, so that lamp right there has been lit up, so that's pretty cool. And then you can see the interior is like very bright. That's because there's 4 additional little string LEDs in there, similar to the ones on the outside here, and then 6 of the strip lights. And what's pretty neat about these light kits is you can still take it apart like a modular building. And when I take it apart, you'll notice that the lights on the 2nd floor actually turn off. That's because there's wireless connections, and those connections are put into plates on the underlying plate and also the tile that caps the floor off. Definitely a pretty cool light kit, but like I mentioned, on the first day, it defeated me. Like, I was getting pretty mad about it. Like, I was like, oh, I don't have the patience for this, and I like gave up. But then I came in with a clear mind today and I figured it out, and I also came up with my own system that simplified the instructions. The instructions are very thorough, but they sort of overwhelmed me. I'm going to record my screen the old-fashioned way. So these are the instructions, and something that's super convenient about them is the fact that they come with this blueprint diagram. So what I would do is actually reference this blueprint diagram because it shows you all the different things and where they attach to. And essentially that blueprint is installed in this building. So this was like so helpful because it tells you where to put everything. And then what I did is I opened the same PDF on a separate page, and I would sort of have a look at the images here. But the most important image, in my opinion, on these pages is the final end result. So for example, this one here shows 3 different strip lights attached and where to put them. So what I would do is actually zoom in on the final product. So this one here, for example, is the 3 strip lights connected by a bunch of wires, and then you can see some 1x1 studs there. It's like, okay, that looks really easy. So then what I would do is refer to the blueprint and find out exactly what wires and lights those are, create it, and then just attach it according to this diagram, rather than looking at all the confusing instructions. They're not really confusing, they're just very thorough. For example, that diagram that we just had a look at has all of these instructions. Like, all of that is for this diagram. You see what I mean about those instructions being a little bit overwhelming and almost a little bit too thorough? All you have to do is refer to the final image and look at the blueprint and then figure it out. And when I light up more of my modular buildings, I'm sort of leaning toward doing it custom. Just order a bunch of the strip lights, some of the junction boxes, and a bunch of the little mini LED lights, and then just like figure it out yourself. Some of the extension cables, because once you know like how it actually works, it's easy enough to come up with a system as to where to place these wires and how to like wire it all up. So I'm definitely going to lean toward the custom lighting. I don't think I need a kit for every single piece. I just need to order all of the different components in bulk. I'm also leaning toward custom because all of my stuff is mills plated. So technically all of these wires should be running underneath the mills plate. For example, this right here is wired up and the wire is going underneath these tiles. It would be better if the wire just dropped below the mills plate and then popped up where it connects to the junction box. And I could do that either by drilling a hole in the plate, or I could also replace the plates where I need to run wires with those Technic plates with the hole in them, and then you can just drop the wires through. It just makes more sense to have these wires running underneath the mills plates. That's sort of the point of mills. Well, one of them at least. Running the wires underneath the tiles was sort of driving me nuts because you can see those tiles right there aren't perfectly pushed down, and that just like drove me crazy. So I made a decision. I didn't run any of my wires underneath the tiles. So you can see the exposed wires inside the building, but can you see them from the outside? No, not really. Can't see any, so it doesn't really bother me that I have loose wires inside. It's just personal preference, everybody. I know this is going to drive a lot of you insane, but just note that this is the way that I want to do it just because I think it looks better in the end. And it's easier to install. And if I ever have to modify some of these wires or replace a light, it's going to be easier to do so because the wires are all loose. Oh no, it's so ugly. I know. But what I decided to do was actually add some Technic bricks. So there is a Technic brick that's attached to that headlight brick right there, and I fed all of the wires through that, and it sort of grouped them together, bundled them up nicely, and then I just put that underneath the staircase. Of course, I could put more like Technic bricks throughout and group those wires in a cleaner fashion, but once again, you can't really see them from the exterior, and if I want to see the museum, I can still see it. I'll just have to remember to ignore the wires. So they do feed under here. I did make a modification there. I replaced one of the plates so there's actually a gap there, so those wires can feed under there nicely. I did the same on this side here, and then there's the Technic brick that all those wires run through, and then the junction box is actually hid underneath the dinosaur. I'm not going to pull that off because all the wires would go everywhere, and it took me a while to bundle them all underneath there. And then I made some more modifications as well. You'll notice that there is a Technic brick right down there, and there's a wire running through it, and you can see that a little more cleanly back here. So there's the cable that's actually connecting the two junction boxes, and then the USB power supply coming off there as well. And yeah, the wires are exposed, but they're not like making my tiles pop, and they're hidden from the exterior, and it didn't drive me insane trying to install them. Honestly, putting the wires underneath the tiles was just driving me crazy, so I would prefer them to look like this than have to struggle with putting the wires underneath the tiles. It's just personal preference, and I think that's something that you just have to do when you're like installing light kits. Just go with what makes you happy. There's the connection tile right there, and then of course there's a plate that attaches to that as well. That wire just hides underneath the staircase there, not too bad. And then these wires just feed right there and go underneath the solar system and then feed these two lights right here. I realized that I was missing one of these, like, whatever you want to call it, like pyramid-like pieces, so I put a stud there. These are the only two interior lights inside, but then of course you have the sticky lights on the floor above on the roof, and you can see how well lit it is down there. There's another connection right there, and then I actually added some 1x2 plates to tack down the wires, and then you can see some of the sticky lights, and when I pop the roof on, those are all going to light up, and there you go. I made some other modifications and some other part swaps. For example, where this runs through, I actually added a 1x2 plate and then a 1x1 stud and a 1x2 plate on top of that, just to give a bigger gap for the wire, just so that it sits flush. So yeah, I just made some modifications to it and followed the instructions loosely based off like 3-4 images. I didn't look at what felt like to be 1,000 images within the instruction manual. I just sort of simplified it and got her done. So now I need to make a decision as to whether or not I'm going to get more light kits or just order a bunch of custom ones. I think my process worked. I know there's a bunch of different ways of doing this, and there's a bunch of different lighting companies for sure. But I think simplifying the instructions, having the exposed wires in the interior just really worked for me. And I look forward to trying to do something with the mills, whether it be like drilling into the plate, having the wire running underneath and then popping up where it needs to run, or using some of those modified Technic plates. But yeah, I think I love the end result, and I think the more that I do it, the easier that it's going to become. And I think maybe eventually I'll learn to love it, especially when we get like 10 modular buildings, not even 10, 5 modular buildings lined up, all lit up. I think I'll get addicted to it. And every single one that I do will become easier and easier and easier, and I'll just come up with a cool system. And eventually I'll just order a bunch of the components in bulk so that I can just very easily light up essentially anything. Yeah, that looks pretty killer. I've got to say, I'm happy with the end result. Everybody, thank you so much for coming on by. Please let me know what you think by commenting below. Please remember to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for some more great stuff coming out in the very near future. And farewell.